So welcome to Places to Grow collective learning event. Places to Grow is a catalyst for collaboration and innovative relationships in the field of early childhood development and care and beyond this field. Places to Grow organizes these collective learning events, which is about inviting our partners of the program to share something that they find interesting or worthwhile to share with others, so we can learn together, because this is how we become wiser together, hopefully. And today's collective learning is a special one because it's connected to the Global Intergenerational Week. This is the last day of this week, and during this week we are celebrating the power of intergenerational relationships. And why is it important? You will hear more about from our panelists today. So I would like to introduce two members of our partner International Child Development Initiatives, Giulia and Margaret, who will present you their insights about intergenerational relationships. And after these two presentations, we will have a Q&A where you can ask questions, whatever comes up in your mind related to the presentations. And after the Q&A session, we will have two breakout rooms with different topics connected to the topic of this collective learning. And you can join those breakout rooms to have an informal conversation, discussion of those topics. It's a more intimate opportunity to have a deeper discussion. And then we will come back to the main room, have a short summary of what happened in the breakout rooms, and then we will say goodbye. So this is the agenda for today. And if you have questions, please make a note to yourself, or you can even share them in the chat during the presentations, and we will collect them and then present them to the speakers if you are a shy person and don't want to speak up your question. But obviously you will have also the opportunity to ask your question yourself. I think this is it. I hope I haven't missed anything that I had to share with you about the event. And I would like to ask Giulia from ICDI to deliver her presentation and introduce yourself, Giulia, briefly to our audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxime. Thanks for introducing the meeting. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, so welcome everyone to this online collective learning event. The title of this event is How Can Generations Grow Together? Intergenerational Learning in Early Child Settings. My name is Giulia Cortellesi, as Maxime already introduced me, and I am the co-director of International Child Development Initiatives. And I'm also one of the co-coordinators of the TOY program, together with my colleague Margaret Kernan, who will present just after me. As Maxime also said, this is the last day of the Global Intergenerational Week, which is a campaign that was created by generations working together in Scotland in cooperation with organizations all over the world that promote intergenerational learning. And it runs for a number of years now. And the TOY program, Together Old and Young, joins in every year and tries to promote it globally, and also, when possible, organize some specific TOY-related events. Okay, so this is the agenda for today. We are now doing the introductions. Then I will say a few words about what is intergenerational learning. So the acronym IGL, intergenerational learning, and something about the TOY program and the 5 goals of IGL. Then I will give the floor to Margaret, who will present this newly published handbook, Generations Growing Together, and why IGL is important in early childhood education and care. Then we will have a Q&A session, and then we will go into 2 breakout rooms. The first one will focus on how IGL contributes to social inclusion in community settings, insights from play hubs in Hungary. And in this breakout room, we have the pleasure to have Eva Deák and Yvette Kovacs as presenters from Partners Hungary Foundation. They will introduce themselves in the breakout room to the participants there. The second breakout room will focus on the role of the educator in planning and implementing IGL and will be facilitated by Margaret. After the breakout rooms, which will take approximately 25 minutes, we will go back to the main room and we will have a feedback round from the breakout rooms and then closing. I would like to start with a short video about intergenerational learning that was published 4 or 5 years ago from Channel 4, a British TV show, Old People's Home for 4 Years Old.
Hello. Oh, missed you.
Despite a near 80-year age gap, Lillian has become 4-year-old Mason's second eldest friend after 102-year-old Sylvia.
Apparently he's been talking about me a lot to his mum, but I think it's the walking stick that's done it. He uses it as his gun. I've got a little great-grandson who is just 4, but my daughter's in Spain and my grandson lives all over the world, so I very rarely see my great-grandchildren. I miss them. I really miss them.
Is that your bed, mate? Or is that your bed, mate?
That one's right. Mason makes me feel treasured. You know, it gives me a nice warm feeling. I don't get it from anywhere else.
4-year-old Sargent always likes to make a big impression.
Sargent is very playful. He's got this really big character. But it would be nice to see the other side of that, which is, can he relate to somebody? Can he connect with them? Will it develop his softer side?
Right. Hey, that's great. Give me a high five. Yay!
Since joining the nursery, Sargent has spent time getting to know the older adults.
Hello. Come back again, Arthur. Come back again. Oh, little.
Sylvia is my friend.
Draw a house, shall we?
Yeah.
Despite almost a century separating their birthdays, Sylvia and Sargent have found a connection.
That way.
Yeah, and then collect it on there.
I love the children, I really do. I feel honoured that they come and talk to me. They make me feel young. It's raining now, it's raining on my house.
There's rain.
When I wake up in the morning, I think, oh, I'm going to see the children again. And I woke up, I can't get dressed quick enough. Put on your finger, have you got on your finger? Now, go up and down like that.
This is a prime example of how an intergenerational experiment benefits everybody concerned, both the children and the adults. The older adults are revisiting skills that they might have not used for a long time, where our 4-year-olds are on the beginning of their learning journey. It's about those 2 journeys coming together and both benefiting.
What's the time, Mr. Wall? Dinner time!
Oh, no! Are you all right there? Yeah!
With less than 24 hours to go before sports day, there's just enough time to get some last-minute practice in.
Oh!
It's really important that we get our older volunteers moving and taking on activities that challenges balance, that challenges their dexterity, that challenges everything about movement, and doing it in a way that is fun, that's competitive, and they can do without thinking about.
Can I have a go?
Stepping up for the go-getters, Lark Hill's oldest resident.
Sylvia, 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 Sylvia.
Hey! Oh, we're going to win. You know, I mean, it's a waste of time for them to go because we're going to win. So, we're going to get them and we'll show them.
I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going back to the presentation now. Probably you've noticed how happy both young children and older adults were in this short clip, and also how simple the activities that they were doing together were. And Margaret will talk more, and also Eva and Yvette, about what are the activities that can really help bringing generations together, and what are the competencies and skills that intergenerational facilitators need to have in order to make this magic happen. Sorry, I'm trying to go to the next slide. Yes. When we talk about intergenerational learning, we talk about learning that involves people of different generations becoming engaged in learning from each other and learning together. So this is a very important, it's not a one-direction relationship, but it's always a two-direction relationship. It's about mutual learning and co-creation as well. In TOY, in Together Old and Young, we did research since 2012 about reasons why IGL is important, and also what are the benefits of IGL, especially focusing on young children under 8 and older adults. And we found out that IGL responds to 3 main societal concerns. The first one is age segregation. So we see that different age groups, so the children and the older adults, often live in isolation into same age institutions, such as kindergartens, preschools, daycare centers, and nursing homes or care homes for older adults on the other end, with very little opportunities to meet. The second societal concern is global aging, which so we see a lot of more older adults, and there is a strong need to promote better age integration and solidarity. And the third one is the fact that our societies are more and more culturally diverse, and there is a strong need for social cohesion and solidarity, where we have a lot of families with the children and young children often coming from other countries with a migrant, refugee background or a minority background, and a lot of older adults, on the other hand, which are citizens of the countries that are hosting these young migrants. And intergenerational learning can not only help bridging between generations, but also between cultures. TOY, as we said, stands for Together Old and Young, and it is a program that started back in 2012 as a European project, and is still continuing. It is a action research program that now goes beyond Europe, and it's really global, and it's the only program that really focuses only on young children and older adults. This is was before TOY a gap, in the sense that many intergenerational programs and activities were engaging older children or teenagers, young people, but very few were looking at how IGL could involve young children and older adults. And this is why we decided to focus on these particular target groups. TOY back in 2012-13 also did a research on the benefits of intergenerational learning and also the goals of intergenerational learning. And we found out that behind every intergenerational initiative, there are basically 5 goals, which we can often find. The first one is building and sustaining relationships. In fact, IGL can enrich relationships, reduce separation between generations, and counteract negative stereotypes and isolation of older people. And one of the best ways of building relationships involves spending time in each other's company, doing simple activities such as art or cooking, and having fun together, like the ones we just saw in the video. The second goal is enhancing social cohesion in the community. In this sense, IGL promotes connections and understanding between different age groups and sectors as they share spaces and collaborate in a range of experiences together. Supporting children and older adults to contribute to joint experiences as active citizens enhances social cohesion in the larger community. The third goal is facilitating older people as guardians of knowledge. Older people's role as guardians of knowledge, traditions, and skills are central to a flourishing society. And older people are a vital link with history and cultural heritage and give children a sense of identity and perspective, as well as sustaining knowledge and skills. The fourth goal is recognizing the role of grandparents in young children's lives. Grandparents, as we all know probably from direct experience, play a central part in the nurture, socialization, and protection of their grandchildren, and play a complementary role to that of the parents, who are often busier with work, for example. But in intergenerational learning, we do not limit ourselves to the role that biological grandparents play in their grandchildren's lives, but we introduce the concept of the social grandparent, which can be particularly significant for children whose parents or grandparent is absent or unavailable because of family breakdown, migration, illness, or death. So this is non-biologically related older adults, which play the role of the social grandparents in young children's lives. The last of these goals is enriching the learning processes of both children and older adults. In fact, IGL offers an innovative approach to learning for children, where they actively engage with older people as learners and teachers in real life context. And this is, as we said, a mutual learning and teaching relationship. There was also an overarching goal that we found during our research, which was improving the health and well-being of both young and old involved in intergenerational activities. All these, I mean, the full research reports can be found on the TOY website, toyproject.net, and many other publications can be found there. But now I will give the floor to Margaret Kernan, who will introduce you to the new published Generations Growing Together handbook. The author of the handbook is Anne Fitzpatrick, and Margaret will tell you more. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Giulia. Delighted to have this opportunity to talk with you all today and to share the exciting news about this wonderful handbook that we're very proud of. It's very needed. Anne Fitzpatrick, the author, was a TOY partner right from the very beginning. She's a lecturer in working with families and communities based in Dublin, Ireland. And right from the beginning of TOY, we realized that a particular group of professionals that were interested in our work were early childhood care and educators. But they needed something that was to support them in developing this new way of working. They really needed, very practical, supportive guidance, but that was rooted or embedded in current research about how young children learn. So Anne actually, and she apologized for not being able to be with us today, she actually decided to focus her PhD research on intergenerational learning as a pedagogical strategy. And so the handbook is not the PhD thesis, I should emphasize that. What she has done in this handbook is, identified the key ideas, key concepts about what it means in practice to bring these generations together, and produced this wonderful handbook. It is freely available from the TOY website. And, it's not a lengthy document. If we just move on to the next slide, Giulia, please. So here you've got the contents, and it begins a little bit like as Giulia, began, what exactly is intergenerational learning? Importantly, Anne roots her ideas and what the research says about current curricula and policies and theory in early childhood care and education. And she does this from an international perspective as well. The central section of the handbook is all about the important role of the educator in planning and implementing practice. And then, quite some emphasis is put on the importance of evaluating practices. So there's one whole section on that. And then, whilst we're emphasizing and have been emphasizing the joy, the magic, the positives about intergenerational learning, the magic that happens when you bring these two age groups together, it's also important to acknowledge it can be challenging. It's not for everybody. Not every older adult necessarily wants to spend time, with 2, 3, 4-year-old children. Similarly, not every young child wants to be part of an intergenerational activity. So that's acknowledged, and how you cope with these challenges are also included in the handbook. We did, and we worked with Anne in the design and the layout of the handbook. We wanted to make it as attractive as possible. There are lots of illustrations and, tip sheets, sample handouts for parents, for example. And on this slide, gives you a quick flavor of the kind of material you'll find in the handbook. One of the requests that we have heard from the public, over the last 10 years, please provide us with some ideas of, the kinds of activities that work for children and older adults together. In the lingo, in the terminology of intergenerational learning, we talk about bridging activities, the activities that bridge these two age groups. So there are 2 pages where Anne has presented, a bank of ideas. And these ideas and activities have all been tried out by early childhood practitioners in their practice. Anne worked very closely with a group of about 8 early childhood educators over a period of a year, really supporting them reflect on their practice, which activities work, which don't, and why. So you'll see the range, of activities here. A lot of them focus on story, on music, on arts, on crafts. And indeed, in the breakout rooms, myself and also Eva and Yvette will be talking a little bit more about those activities, what one works well. We also have a reflection section, so at the end of each chapter, Anne, puts in a suggestion of something that you could do, like draw up of a memo to the board of management of your service to introduce practice. Because introducing a new innovative practice like this, there is an element of needing to persuade people this is a good idea, this works. And at the end of each chapter, there are also links to additional resources. All of the links are live. They're all freely available. And there are, of course, plenty of photographs throughout the whole handbook. So it is a very attractive handbook. Next slide, Jules. So just zooming in particularly on early childhood care and education, and what IGL looks like in that setting. We can summarize three approaches or three forms of intergenerational learning. And you'll see that on this slide. So the first form would be involving so-called active older adults as volunteers coming into a kindergarten, a preschool, or a daycare center. Very often these are people who maybe are in retirement age, who still want to make a contribution to the community. Perhaps they have skills to share. Perhaps they're grandparents themselves. They don't necessarily need to be grandparents, but they come in on a regular day, on a weekly basis, to spend time in a group. Maybe it's a story sharing activity, maybe it's art, maybe it's gardening, but they are known by the group of children and they're regular attendees. So that's one form. A second form of intergenerational learning in early years education is what's known as co-location or shared sites. And this is a practice that has existed more than 10 years in countries like Japan and the US and in the UK. And when we were starting out in Toy more than 10 years ago, we found a few examples of this also in the Netherlands, where you you set up the early years service in the same building, in the same space as a care home for older adults. So it's sometimes called shared sites or co-location. So at a very practical level, it involves sharing resources, sharing physical spaces. But the real magic happens when the programs become integrated. You know, the programs for the older adults becomes partly integrated with the programs for the children. Maybe they can eat together. They can do some arts and crafts activities together. They can visit each other in the same building, which makes it practically, you know, very, very possible. And then the third example is a visit called the visitation model. And literally this means when either the group of, you know, 3 to 6 year olds, or it could be the early years of primary school, 7 to 8 year olds, visit the older adults in the care home, or it could happen the other way around, the older adults visiting, you know, a group of older adults coming to a kindergarten or a preschool. Typically, it's more likely, though, because of mobility issues, that the young children are visiting the older adults. Here, it's really, really important that they're close by. And I'll be talking a little bit more about this approach in the breakout room. But again, regular visits, it's really important. You know, you've got this continuity in relationships. So we're not talking about a one-off Christmas concert, for example. We're talking about, you know, regular visitations over some months, over years. So they're the three forms of IGL that's most typical in early childhood care and education. And the next slide. Why is it important? Now, I'm just very briefly touching on the main issues here. And obviously, this is in much more detail in the handbook. But it's really, really important when you're talking about this work that you're able to explain it and identify, you know, precisely how it benefits young children and older adults in the community, but also how it links to early child, what we know about how young children learn. So it is all about relationships. And we know from research that children learn best through nurturing relationships. And IGL creates opportunities for nurturing relationships between young children and older adults. And this contributes to their learning and development. How does this happen? Well, it happens in the linkages between the social and emotional and cognitive development as the very basis for learning. Children need to feel safe and secure and connected with another person, whether that's another adult or an older adult or other children or the teacher. Another benefit of intergenerational learning, that it really supports children's development of active listening, taking perspectives, you know, so they're really observing these other older adults, you know, being curious about why they move the way they do, curious about, you know, the challenges they have, but also the lives they've led. It really supports children to take the initiative and, you know, maybe be supportive. They learn about social norms and values, you know, politeness, social etiquette, you know, what's appropriate in different social situations. And they're also developing empathy and respect and kindness, which are fundamental life skills that last a lifetime. It's also important, you know, sometimes you might think about, and you saw this in the video, you know, young children can be, and it's very positive, they're very energetic, they're very curious, they move with their whole bodies. But one of Anne's observations, and we've seen this in other research, is, you know, that the children unconsciously are able to regulate their behavior when they are with older adults. So they understand, you know, when it's appropriate to be quieter, when it's appropriate to, when more activity, it also works. And so they're learning to regulate their behavior. And importantly as well, children's own sense of identity and belonging, connectedness are reinforced. You know, they're belonging to a family, their sense of belonging to a community. And this is reinforced in the caring and reciprocal relationships they have with older adults. So looking at all of those benefits, you can see why it's important, you know, that both Giulia and I have been emphasizing, you know, the regular contact, the continuity, because it takes time to build up these trusting, caring relationships. So these are just some of the arguments, and there are many, many more in the handbook as about why it's important in early childhood care and education. And the next slide. This is just one of the quotes and one of the photographs from the handbook. So this is in her research, Anne paid a lot of attention to zooming in on the young children's perspectives of intergenerational learning, as well as the educators and indeed the parents. So, you know, the children were asked to reflect on, you know, what was it like to visit their grand friends in the neighboring centre. And they commented, you know, and this was important for the child, you know, they like playing with me. And then for the educator, they said, you know, those children going down to the day centre, we're seeing empathy being built up. Some of the older people have no speech, and to see the children actually understanding them and supporting the older people to do things, it's amazing stuff. It's so natural to the children. So it was quite an eye-opening experience for the educators. And, you know, it's important, I guess, not to underestimate children's capacities, but also children's capacities for empathy and understanding. So as we've been mentioning, I mean, we've been involved in TOY, understanding, researching, you know, talking to educators all around the world and providing training for more than 10 years now. So we have built up a very rich bank of resources about all aspects of intergenerational learning. And on this slide, we've just zoomed in on 3 publications we've been involved in. The first one there is called Share a Story, that was published to coincide with the Global Intergenerational Week 2 years ago. And it's all about, you know, how can you use books and stories and children's literature to connect young children and older adults. So there are tips for reading aloud. There's tips for selecting books that challenge age stereotypes for educators. And also, you know, tips about how to arrange a dynamic reading aloud session with young children, also involving older adults. The book in the middle is a Routledge published book that we edited in 2009 with chapters written by architects, educators, sociologists, from some of whom were part of Partners in Toy, others as well. And that book is available from Routledge, and that's the title there. And then the third book is called Intergenerational Bonds. This was published by Springer. And we were asked to, so we have written the preface for that book, but it is a book, again, with many, many chapters, mainly American authors, but with a huge, rich references and research resources. And what's distinctive about the intergenerational bonds is that they really look in detail on the grandparent relationship. You know, when grandparents need to step in as carers, for example, in situations where parents are absent or there's problems with drug addiction. It also looks at bereavement as well in that book. So, and of course, we have the website there for you where all of the resources are available, as well as news and a series of international blogs that have been running since 2018. Okay, next slide. Conscious of the time, we want to give you time to talk as well and ask questions. So this is time for you to ask questions on anything that you've heard so far, anything you're curious about, anything, any comments, any reflections that come to mind.
Thank you very much, Giulia and Margaret, for your presentation. And as Margaret said, yeah, if you have any question, any comment to Giulia and Margaret, this is the time. Maybe you want to share something with us that these presentations reminded you of. So feel free to put it into the chat or just unmute yourself and ask the question or contribute your comment. Yes, Tano, please.
Yes, thank you. How well do you hear me? Is it okay? Yeah. I wondered about one other discussion that we're having in this group, and that's the coordinated services. And I can imagine that at the local level, you might have a person dealing with elderly, and you might have a different person dealing with children. Like how, like, or it may be two departments or whatever else. So I just wanted to ask, like, what's your experience with this, and how does this connect? If it's like, I don't know, like education and social services or something, like whether my thinking of this is another way of coordinated services is right, or I'm completely out of the box, which would also be great.
Well, I take this from Giulia, and then maybe you can add. Yeah, good question. And by its very nature, intergenerational learning is interdisciplinary, but it's also cross-sectoral, and it requires working with other professionals. And so it's one of the required skills for anybody who wants to work intergenerationally. They need to be able to collaborate with other sectors, other professions. So, and that's why we pay so much emphasis on the planning stages and building the relationships. So it's not just about the children building relationships with older adults, you know, and giving time for that. It's also about building relationships with other services in your locality. So the starting point would be for, you know, an early childhood educator to reach out to the community services in their locality, which provide day services, maybe provides, you know, could be residential care for older adults. It could also be, though, reaching out to local arts centers, you know, the local libraries, the local museums, you know, the cultural centers, because they're another venue for, you know, intergenerational learning. So in the handbook, quite some attention, you know, is paid to, you know, having meetings with these other professionals, shared visions, understanding, thinking about boundaries, you know, who's responsible for what, but also, you know, and around this bridging activity, okay, well, what are the commonalities between young children and older adults? So I think it's important for, you know, early childhood educators to recognize, you know, while they may be experts in how young children learn and develop, they may not really be, you know, professionally experts in care for the older adult. But they can work collaboratively with professionals. So there is a very nice opportunity for cross-sectoral work here. And then it is also important at the local authority, the municipal level, to think about their policies, their social care, social policy, welfare policies, not as completely separate, okay, children are here, older adults are here, but actually looking at the possibilities for collaboration, for integrating at a policy level too. But it is a big part of working intergenerationally, is working with other sectors and, you know, seeing the possibilities. You know, we say, and this is something that we've learned, you know, over the last 10 years, to work intergenerationally, you do need to be able to think out of the box. You do need to be able to see possibilities in the community. You do need to be able to, you know, maybe do things a little bit differently and be a little bit brave. So it takes leadership and, you know, a commitment and a passion for what you're doing. Giulia, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you covered all of it. So there is a more like a systemic level, like there needs to be, I think, a joint or shared awareness and motivation for collaboration between services of different sectors or even at municipal level. But we also saw, Margaret, as you said, that many times it is actually the idea of an individual practitioner that makes it happen, maybe even informally at the very beginning, and then if it is supported and sustained by the institutions, it can become bigger and it can become like a program more than just a one-off activity. But we also have two, we have, well, one comment from Granada. Carolina is saying that in Granada they have one intergenerational center which has an intergenerational coordinator for both sides. So a daycare center for older adults and a nursery school for 0 to 3 years old. And this is really about, I think, training intergenerational coordinators and facilitators that need to have knowledge of both worlds and both ways of learning and developing and spending time together. So it's a sort of a different profession to the early childhood educator and the social care practitioner. And maybe, I don't know if Carolina wants to expand on this. She sent a link as well, which we might look at later.
Hi.
But
hi. Yes.
yeah, hi, Carolina.
Hi. Hello. She's an educator, but he has a huge training in intergenerational programs and in both generations. So she can work together with the adults and the children, and she can plan and organize and facilitate the intergenerational activities and the planning for all the facilitators, because in that intergenerational center, all the facilitators work with all the generations, but she has the role to organize and coordinate the planning and the times and so on, and the visits to the center. That is.
Thank you, Carolina. Thank you. And we also have, and everyone can, I mean, click on the link you shared for more information. But there is another question. I don't know, Maxime, if you want to read it. And
yes, so we have a question from Marisa. And she's asking, with all the research and experience you have, is there any pedagogy that works better than another, or does it depend on the culture of the place?
I think it's in our initial years in TOY, we were very curious about the differences, particularly across different countries in Europe, and how intergenerational learning was expressed and experienced between older adults and young children. So for sure, there definitely is commonalities across the world on this, you know, the importance of the relationships, you know, the fun and the interaction, the enjoyment of each other's company. You know, we definitely identified that activities like eating together, stories together, songs together, these were universal bridging activities. However, there were some differences between countries and cultures on how the relation was expressed. Not surprising, maybe in the Southern Europeans, there was more obvious physical affection between young children and older adults. You know, a lot of touching, hugging, you know, toddlers sitting on the knees of older adults. And in other countries, while there wasn't maybe so much physical contact, there was a lot of shared humor and jokes. So there are differences. Also, another difference in some of the countries, and I'm speaking mostly about, you know, about my own country, Ireland here, and indeed the UK, there was more awareness of and concern about child protection issues and safeguarding. And this, you know, if you're going to organize intergenerational learning, you need to be super aware of police clearance. And that was a little bit can be a little bit off-putting for, you know, older adults who want to volunteer to come in to work in a service if they're told, actually, you know, we need to do a police check on you before you have contact with children. So in some country, you know, obviously safeguarding of children and indeed older adults is important everywhere. In some countries more than others, that was more perceived as a barrier to intergenerational work. But I have to say the similarities between cultures on this were more than the differences. Giulia, anything to add, or do you agree on that?
I was just thinking about the intergenerational summer camps that we have been supporting for many years in the north of Italy, where there was clearly a strong emphasis on using Montessori pedagogy, for example. They found out that Montessori pedagogy was working very well for both the older adults and young children. But in general, I would say non-formal education, learning by doing, simple, creative activities that involve music, arts, nature, sensory experiences. I would say these are the most popular ones and the ones that work best according to our experience.
Thank you. I ask it because I'm an architect, and for me, so I have a really good friend who's expert in didactics, and I freak her out. And she said, "I'm not an expert." I say, "I will ask the expert," because I really believe that we really need to rethink the space in more sensory way, and how we allowed movement for everyone. But this is, I'm not an expert like you. For that reason, I wanted to ask, because in order to change some beliefs, I need to have a beautiful people like you with a lot of research in order to. And yeah,
but
thank
Marisa,
you for being so inspiring.
No,
you know?
There are publications about architecture and intergenerational learning that are available, and I think a couple of blogs on the DOI website also tackle this issue. And what we noticed, especially in co-locations in shared sites, so where we have daycare centers for children and care homes for older adults, the flexibility of the space is key. Privacy is key. So the fact that both groups can choose when to interact and when not to interact. The fact that they can see each other even when they don't interact. So a lot of like glass doors, moving walls, and the flexibility of the furniture so that it can be both child friendly and older people friendly. Indoors and outdoor spaces. But if you look in the toy blog and if you reach out to us, we can send you more resources. There are also specific publications on urban intergenerational spaces like parks and squares and how to make them into intergenerational spaces. Yeah,
I will reach you. I already sent you a message on LinkedIn, so I'm super eager to do
Yeah.
that.
No,
Thank
no,
you.
we love chatting with architects, Marisa. So I'm delighted to meet you and to connect with you, because it's a professional that really need to get involved in this work. As you say, we need to rethink how we design our spaces so they are age friendly. You know, and a very practical tip, you know, that Anne mentions in the handbook is, you know, thinking about the seating, that children and older adults have eye-to-eye contact. So that's, you know, this is about arranging, you know, the furniture and the height of the furniture. And what you don't want is, you know, a group of children in the middle and then the older adults around in a circle observing them, you know, as if, you know, they're on show. It's really, how can you design the space so you've got these pairs of small groups, you know, of an older adult with a child. But yeah, so that there are many architectural design ideas that are relevant for this kind of work.
Thank you.
And
Because
if I can
we
add
don't want the
the-
panopticon thing. It should be really fluent space, like a feeling well space. And I was checking some research in neuroaesthetics about how fractal space impacting the brain. So I'm super excited because it's a lot to do. So see you later.
If I can add, this is also another layer of the cross-sectoral cooperation that Stano was mentioning before, like so urban planning and architecture of educational spaces. It's another level of that collaboration between sectors that needs to be taken into account.
Marisa, you might also be interested. There will be a conference in Bratislava end of May about children and urbanism. It's called Start with Children, and Teresa will put a link into the chat. I think it's an interesting conference that might also give you more perspective on this topic. Okay, time flies. So we are going to get into the breakout rooms. Just two rules of the breakout rooms. There is no rule. This is not rule number one, and there are no wrong questions, and you don't have to perform. So just telling you, don't be afraid to join the rooms. It's just an opportunity to get a deeper informal conversation about these topics. And we will have two breakout rooms today. Room number one is about how intergenerational learning contributes to social inclusion in community settings, and you will get some insights from play hubs in Hungary. And I will take this opportunity to ask Eva and Yvette to introduce themselves and maybe also give a little bit of context. What is Play Hub and what is the topic that you want to discuss with the participants of your breakout rooms? Basically, please give us your pitch of the breakout room.
Hello, thank you. Hello, thank you, Maxim. Welcome everybody to this workshop. We are from Partners Hungary Foundation. We've been partners for ICDI from the very beginning, both in the together old and young, and also a later project which was a toy for inclusion. And we've been partnered in establishing play hubs, which are safe places for young children, mostly between 0 and 8. Safe places where children and parents can play together. These are play and learn and develop together. And these places are giving floor for intergenerational learning activities as well. So this is what we are going to show you, how these activities are organized in different places. Last year, we established 13 play hubs in 13 different localities in Hungary, including Budapest districts and very small villages in the north part of Hungary, where a lot of Roma people live. And these play hubs have different kinds of intergenerational activities. So that's what we are going to talk about in our short presentation. And after that, we will open the floor for discussion in the breakout room.
Right. Thank you very much. Yvette, do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Thank you. So I'm a lecturer and researcher in the early childhood education field, and at Partners Hungary Foundation, I'm coordinating the Play Hub establishing and coordinating the Play Hub's operation. And also I'm responsible for early childhood education projects and activities.
Thank you very much. And so for those who don't know the Play Hub program, I just want to add that it's a highly successful program with a lot of insights, not only in Hungary. Play Hubs are operating in different countries. So I think it will be very interesting to join this breakout room and learn from the experience of Eva and Yvette running the Play Hubs in Hungary. And so this is room number 1. So if you want to join this topic, you will need to choose room number 1. And room number 2 is led by Margaret. And yeah, I would like to ask Margaret to introduce your topic of the breakout room and who should join you there.
Thanks, Maxime. Well, I'll be just zooming in a little bit more on the role of the educator in planning and implementing IGL, but I'm actually really interested in hearing from you, what your questions are and where you see the possibilities in implementing IGL in your context. So it's a discussion. It's an open discussion, a time for a chat and ask questions.
Great. So in a minute, you will see the opportunity to join the breakout room. So join them and we will meet in like 15-20 minutes before. Welcome back. Wow, we missed you. Great. Okay. We have 3 minutes to close this collective learning event. So very quickly, sorry for the rush, if Eva and Yvette and then Margaret, you could just summarize very briefly what happened in your breakout room, that would be really nice. So Eva, please.
So we had a short but sparkling conversation. We've heard some personal examples, and I would like to highlight on 2 things what we experience in the group. One is that in some cultures, it's more natural to have practices when generations do things together, they live together, they cook together. And we've heard examples from the Italian culture, and also we've heard some Czech examples. And the other thing was very interesting for me to hear that if someone grows up in a cultural, in a family where this intergenerational learning and being together is part of life, it's very hard to miss when the parents have children and they have a strong desire to have it as an everyday practice. So that's what we've learned in our groups. And also we've heard that there are examples in the countries for intergenerational learning. But for example, we've heard that there are some practices like school children visit elderly homes, but there is no framework for doing that. And that if there are frameworks to do that, that supports the whole thing and supports the practice of intergenerational learning. What else, Yvette, would you add? That's okay.
Thank you very
so
much.
thank you very much. Thanks for our group members. If anyone would like to add something from our group.
Fortunately, we don't have time for this, but I think we'll have another opportunities. We will still have learning events. Margaret, if you would
thanks, Maxime. I actually asked Karen from New Zealand to do the feedback from our group. So I sort of landed with that on her at the end. Thanks a million, Karen, just to have another voice and another perspective.
No worries. Hopefully you can hear me. I think for us it was more about just where you start sometimes, and having if you're starting out, educators being enthused and where they can draw from those I suppose already experiences. One of our group members is already has older adults around, and it's how can we get them engaged, and how can we start with that. From my perspective in New Zealand, it's just about bringing out what's already happening and getting it, I suppose, out in the open a little bit more, and supporting those that are, running different programs in different parts of the country. But I don't know if I did a good job there, Margaret, or not. So, but yeah, it was great.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So this was it, the collective learning event of Places to Grow. A couple of links quickly to you if you are interested in the Places to Grow program. You can visit our website that Teresa will post, and also you can meet us in person in November in Prague, because we are organizing the Places to Grow conference to celebrate collaborative, innovative projects from Central Eastern Europe. Please join us. Teresa will post a link to the conference. And also we are having an awarding collaborative and innovative projects from the region. So if you happen to have such a project, or about someone who is running such a project, you can also nominate them, and we will have a Q&A about the award on 6th of May. You can also sign up for this Q&A if you want to learn more about the award. This is it. Sorry for running 2 minutes over the time. It was very, very nice to have you all here. Thank you very much for ICDI, Giulia and Margaret, to deliver this topic on the World Intergenerational Day, Global Intergenerational Day, week, sorry. And I would like also to thank Teresa and Diana, my colleagues, for organizing this event. Thank you very much. And stay tuned for our next collective learning event. You will have the information about it on our social media channels, so please follow them. Have a good day, and thanks for coming.
Thank you, Maxime. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.